This video has been a long time in the making, so let's get into it. You can't out-exercise a bad diet. Nutrition is king. Nutrition is foundational. Food is medicine. Food is information for the body. And, everybody eats. And so what are you making your body out of? Today, we're going to be talking about nutrition. It can be a very touchy topic. There is a lot of emotions surrounding the topic of nutrition. And I wouldn't say that I've necessarily been putting this video off, but I've been approaching it with a level of caution because I am aware that this topic can be highly charged. There are a lot of opinions surrounding nutrition. There's a lot of things that influence how we eat, what we eat, when we eat, from culture, society, religion, you name it. So today we're going to talk about it. What food are you fueling your body with? So today we're going to talk about nutrition, but maybe not in the way that you've heard it talked about before or in the way that you're expecting me to talk about it today. I'm not going to tell you what the best diet is. I'm not going to tell you what the best diet is for you, but I am going to talk about how our nutrition is impacting our health. Not just our health as adults, but also the health of our children. And by the end of this video, I want you to walk away with 3 things. The first thing is awareness of a growing problem that we have within our culture and society and within our homes regarding nutrition. Number 2 is that I want you to be empowered by your ability to change that culture. And number 3, you will be equipped with action steps to take to move you towards better health through nutrition so that you can become the agent of change within your family unit or your ecosphere. All right, if we're just meeting, hello, my name is Jessica Johnson. I am a board-certified family nurse practitioner specializing in endocrinology and diabetes. I have advanced training in lifestyle medicine, functional medicine, and weight management. And on this platform, I share practical information and tips on how to improve your metabolic health. My hope is to bring awareness to the growing chronic disease epidemic or non-communicable disease epidemic, and to empower you with information so that you can understand how healthy habit change impacts your body in a positive way. And I try hard to equip you with practical and actionable tools to take from the screen and implement into your busy life. So here we go. Let's talk about nutrition, all right? And I can't have a conversation about nutrition without talking about the abundance of ultra-processed foods that we are inundated with in our current culture and lives. Ultra-processed foods, or UPFs, make up 60% of the American adult diet, with higher rates being observed in lower income homes. So what? So what's the big deal about ultra-processed foods? Ultra-processed foods, why are we hearing so much talk about ultra-processed foods? Are they really that bad? Yes, they are. These foods or food-like substances are well known to come with certain health implications. High consumption of ultra-processed foods is associated with an increased risk of chronic diseases such as obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and some cancers. Therefore, it is so important to focus on limiting these foods and focusing more on whole foods or minimally processed foods. Now, here's the kicker. I said that in adults, nearly 60% of our daily caloric intake is from ultra-processed foods. What do you think the percentage is for kids? More or less? Yeah, I bet you guessed right. It's higher. This number is even higher in our kids, with nearly 2/3 of their daily caloric intake being comprised of ultra-processed foods. This is according to NHANES data from 2018. And remember the health implications that I just stated. Those health implications are also true for our kids. Most chronic diseases are caused by a short list of risk factors. Those risk factors include smoking, poor nutrition, physical inactivity, and excessive alcohol use. And some groups are more at risk than others because of their limited ability to make healthier choices. And we're going to touch on that later in this video because it is very important. So what exactly is chronic disease? So chronic disease is defined as a condition that lasts a year or more and requires ongoing medical attention and or limits your activities of daily living. Chronic diseases such as heart disease, cancer, and diabetes are the leading causes of death and disability in the United States, and not to mention are driving up healthcare costs. 6 in 10 Americans have at least one chronic condition, and 4 in 10 have at least 2 chronic conditions. And like I said before, many chronic conditions have a short list of risk factors, including poor nutrition, physical inactivity, excess alcohol intake, and smoking. And today we're going to talk about the risk factor of poor nutrition. According to the CDC, in 2021, 38.1 million US adults had diabetes. That's 14.7% of the population. Now let's take a look at prediabetes. In 2021, it's estimated that 97.6 million US adults aged 18 and older had prediabetes. That's 38% of the US adult population having prediabetes, as determined by their fasting glucose or A1C level. So if you combine 38% plus 14.7%, hey Google, what's 38 plus 14.7?
38 plus 14.7 is 52.7.
That's over half of the US adult population ages 18 and older having either prediabetes or diabetes. So this is not new news. These are not new stats, and I imagine you've heard at least one, if not all, of these stats before. But it's feeling like maybe we're becoming a little bit numb to these statistics, like we're starting to normalize chronic disease. I like to remind you that just because something is common does not make it normal. And like I said before, there is a short list of risk factors that put a person at increased risk of developing these chronic diseases. And these are risk factors that we can control. So maybe you are used to hearing these stats. Maybe you've heard them before, but please continue to listen. Don't turn your ears off just yet, because I wonder if you've heard the stats when it comes to children and chronic disease. When it comes to kids, approximately 1 in 5 children or adolescents have obesity. Now, obesity is one of the most important risk factors in the development of type 2 diabetes. Obesity affects some groups more than others, and this includes Hispanic and non-Hispanic Black children and children in families with lower incomes. Childhood obesity is defined as having a body mass index at or above the 95th percentile for age and sex. And I know that talking about childhood obesity is also one of those topics that are very sensitive, and I understand. And the reason why I'm talking about it is in the context of risk for chronic disease. Like I said, childhood obesity or obesity in general puts a person at an increased risk for developing conditions such as type 2 diabetes. And we're going to talk about the significance of that, especially as it pertains to children, just a little bit. Just hang on, just a little bit later into this video. Now let's talk about prediabetes in children. Now when it comes to prediabetes in children, prediabetes affects 1 in 5 children aged 12 to 18 and 1 in 4 aged 19 to 34 years old. And why is this important? Individuals with prediabetes are at increased risk for developing type 2 diabetes, chronic kidney disease, and cardiovascular disease. And the incidence and prevalence of type 2 diabetes in the US adolescent population has increased within the last 10 years. 4 decades ago, the term juvenile diabetes referred to type 1 diabetes, which is an autoimmune diabetes. And adult onset diabetes was synonymous with type 2 diabetes. 3 decades ago, pediatric type 2 diabetes began to emerge. Now today, the incidence of type 2 diabetes in adolescents is now more than double that of the incidence of type 1 diabetes in non-white, racial, and ethnic groups. It has only recently become recognized as a pediatric disease in clinical settings. Now, while youth onset type 2 diabetes is still relatively rare, any incidence of type 2 diabetes in adolescents is concerning because of its aggressive clinical course. This is due to its associated risk of debilitating complications by young adulthood and high all-cause mortality. In this chart here, you can see the trend overall of rising incidence of youth onset type 2 diabetes. But when you further look, you can also see the disparities amongst racial and ethnic groups. You can see the incidents are higher in American Indian populations, non-Hispanic Black populations, Hispanics, Asian Pacific Islanders, and lastly, non-Hispanic white, which has kind of kept a steady line over the years. So what does this mean? What does this matter? Type 2 diabetes is increasingly being diagnosed in children and adolescents with obesity. Now, evidence suggests that this disease progresses more rapidly in youth compared to adults, and is associated with high rates of early microalbuminuria, hypertension, and dyslipidemia. And hear this, it has been estimated that children with type 2 diabetes with onset, that means the time they were diagnosed, with onset at 10 years, will lose 19 health years. That is significant. Now, for some of you listening, this may hit home, but for others, it may just still seem pretty vague and arbitrary and a bunch of stats and numbers and medical conditions that I'm splurring out at you. But let me tell you what I see. I see a child's face. I sit in front of children and their parents every single day that I go to work. And it often feels like I'm up against the belly of the beast that is type 2 diabetes. This disease is a monster of a disease. Once common and only seen in the adult population, it's now hitting our kids. And to make such a sad statement even worse, type 2 diabetes in children is a much more aggressive disease than it is in adolescents with type 1 diabetes and adults with type 2 diabetes. It's not fair. This is no longer just a matter of us adults wanting to, get healthy so that we can have more energy to play with our kids or walk our children down the aisle. We now need to model healthy habits so that our kids can have energy to play, so that our kids can reach adulthood and walk themselves down the aisle, so that our kids can reach adulthood in good health and have kids of their own. It's no longer just about us adults getting healthy for our health. We have to do better to protect the health of our kids, period. This is serious. It's going to take societal and cultural change. Now, I know that's a bit of a doozy, so you might be thinking, well, how do we correct this? How do we make this better? How do we improve? We know that the conditions in which we are born, live, play, pray, and work drastically affect our ability to make healthy choices and impact our health outcomes. Social factors such as education, income, housing, access to healthcare, access to nutritious foods are all central when we're talking about the progression, the development, and the progression of type 2 diabetes. The incidence and prevalence of type 2 diabetes, plus comorbidities and complications associated with these conditions, are disproportionately higher in populations of lower socioeconomic status and historically marginalized populations. They say it takes a village to raise a child, and I believe it. But what about when that child is sick? Or what about when it comes to preventing that child from becoming sick in the first place? It no longer takes just a village. It takes a whole society, a culture of change. Our culture and our society need to change. Now, I said I was going to empower you, didn't I? I know. So I know this is a lot to take in. I know this is a lot to hear. And while yes, it can seem like the magnitude of this problem is so immense, there's so much that we can do on an individual, family, and village level to blunt the progression here and to even turn the tides in the direction of good health outcomes. Because while I often sit in front of families that are facing the challenges of type 2 diabetes management, I also see the wins. I also get to help children and families reverse their child's prediabetes. I get to help families put their child's type 2 diabetes into remission. And those are such wonderful days that I celebrate every single time. And I pray that I get to see more of those occurrences because they are truly something to celebrate. And what I can say about the families that are successful in reversing their child's prediabetes or putting their child's type 2 diabetes into remission is they come at it from a family unit. The child is not ostracized. The family puts in the work and they're able to make these changes as a unit. And they're so much stronger when a child is fully supported by the whole family unit. And it's a beautiful sight to see. And yes, it does take a lot of work, but it's doable. So I'm encouraging us to start with us, start with our family, start with our community. And what does that look like? Well, I can tell you one thing that it doesn't look like. I know you hear so much out there about the right diet, kind of what I led this video with. The right diet for you. What's the best diet? What's the right diet for you? You hear things like the DASH diet, Mediterranean diet, ketogenic diet, low fat diet, high protein diet, low carb diet. What's the right diet for you? All the options and choices and decisions can seem overwhelming. But what I would encourage you to do is to not focus on the dietary pattern, at least not in the beginning, because here's the thing, there's no right diet for everyone. What works for one person may not work for the next person. And number two, there's no one right diet, even for you as an individual. A dietary pattern, such as the dietary patterns that I mentioned before, are meant to fit a particular person during that period in their life. So we go through stages of life. As our stages of life change, so too might our dietary pattern have to change. So even thinking about the right diet for you, go into it knowing that that could change even for you several months to years or a different stage of life from now. Or in the face of illness, your dietary pattern may need to change. The one thing that many of these dietary patterns have in common is that a dietary pattern that is well formulated is typically based off of a whole foods diet. Now, yes, you can definitely do like dirty keto or low fat diet that's comprised of ultra processed foods with these 100-calorie snacks, and you know what I mean. But those are typically not well sustained and not the way the dietary pattern was designed to be implemented in the first place. All right, so here are some calls to action for you. Now, I'm gonna list several because I want you to meet yourself where you are. Now, some of you have been working towards eliminating ultra processed foods for a bit now. You might still be struggling at some areas or not. While others may be in that category where your diet as an adult is comprised of 60%, approximately 60% of ultra processed foods, and your kids are way up there as well. So if you're starting from there, I'm gonna have a call to action for you too. Okay, so choose your adventure here. Okay, so let's talk about where we can start. First, instead of focusing on what dietary pattern to follow, like the ones that I mentioned previously, focus on the common denominator, which is a diet comprised of primarily whole foods or minimally processed foods, and reducing your consumption of these ultra processed foods that we know are contributing to poor health outcomes. Consider starting with dinner, right? A dinner that's home cooked, that's comprised of primarily whole foods. And the cherry on the top is to have dinner with your family. Eat with your kids, see what they're consuming, talk, share, discuss the day, discuss the week. And if you're a person who's already having dinner as a family, dinner is primarily whole food based, work on having that next meal. Work on improving the consistency of your breakfast or your lunch. And if you're someone who's already making whole food based breakfast, lunches, and dinners, focus on your snacks. So meet yourself where you are and see where you have room for improvement and focus on that area. What if you're someone who, you live alone, you're single, you don't have kids, you're in great health? How can you change this tide? You can be a part of that ecosphere. You can be a part of that culture of change. If you're going to a party, maybe consider bringing some healthy food options, right? Maybe not going to the cookies and the cakes at every gathering. Maybe be the one to bring the fresh fruit or the fresh vegetables. And in your mind, maybe thinking about that child who is trying to make healthy options. Because I tell you what, when you go out into society, it is very hard to make healthy choices. The options are way more limited when it comes to having healthy food options than it is to being offered something that is ultra processed, high in sugar, high in fat, high in sodium, all the things. So you can consider being a positive agent of change for people who are really struggling with their health or who are really trying to make a conscious effort to improve their health through their nutrition. That's how you can help contribute. Or when you're at work, the potlucks, the snacks, the things, you can be an agent of change within your work culture, within your community, within your church community. Be the person who brings the healthy option to give relief to the person who is really struggling or really trying to make the healthy choices. And of course, the healthy option benefits everyone, not just the person with the chronic health condition. But it does provide support to that person and lets them know that, hey, there are people on my side and I do have support when I step outside of my house. So yes, things do have to change, but we do have more power in this than we may give ourselves credit for. Now, again, there is a big picture here that requires law, healthcare policy reform. And so yes, things do have to change in a big way because this ship is not headed in a good direction as it stands. But we do have power to steer things into the right direction. But it takes us all taking combined effort and awareness that there's even a problem and then making effort to help improve these outcomes in our kids and of course in ourselves. So I pray this video helps just one person. If this video encourages just one person to make healthy changes moving forward, just change one healthy habit, then it's done its job. So if you found this video helpful, please consider sharing the video with someone else and liking and subscribing. If you are someone who is looking for healthy meal options, I do have a playlist. If you click here, you'll get some nice healthy recipes and meal prep tips. All right, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.